There's Chapter 1, The Shadowed Departure. The platform at King's Cross Station was a hive of hurried elegance, where the well-heeled of London society converged like bees to a final bloom before the chill of autumn deepened. It was a crisp evening in September 1935, the air laced with the acrid tang of coal smoke and the faint perfume of departing fortunes. The night express to Edinburgh gleamed under the gas lamps, its crimson carriages a promise of nocturnal luxury, whisking the elite northward through the velvet dark. Hercule Poirot, that inimitable Belgian detective whose little grey cells had unravelled more knots than a fisherman's net, adjusted the silk square in his breast pocket with a fastidious flick. His potent leather shoes clicked against the stone as he surveyed the scene, his egg-shaped head tilting ever so slightly, as if listening to the whispers of the crowd. At 55, Poirot remained a figure of precise dapperness, the pointed moustaches waxed to perfection, the Inverness cape draped with theatrical flair, and eyes that missed nothing, not the flicker of anxiety in a porter's glance, nor the hurried clasp of a gloved hand. "Ah, mon vieux," came a familiar voice, warm and bluff as a country squire's handshake. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's steadfast companion of many adventures, emerged from the throng, his face ruddy beneath a Trilby hat. He carried a battered suitcase in one hand and a copy of the Times in the other, its headlines proclaiming yet another financial scandal in the city. "Hastings!" Poirot's face lit with genuine delight, though tempered by his habitual irony. "You arrive at the 11th hour as always. One might think you enjoy the drama of a last-minute embarkation." Hastings chuckled, clapping Poirot on the shoulder with the easy camaraderie of old soldiers. "Guilty as charged, old boy, but dash it all, the traffic from Mayfair was infernal. Still, here we are, off to Edinburgh for that symposium on Scottish antiquities. I say, Poirot, do you really think there's anything to these tales of cursed Highland relics? Sounds like a lot of superstitious rot to me." Poirot's eyes twinkled as they boarded the train, the conductor tipping his cap with a murmur of "First class, sir." "Superstition, Hastings? Non, non. It is the human heart that curses itself. The relics are but mirrors to our greeds and envies. But come, let us secure our compartment before the rabble descends." Their sleeping compartment was a haven of Edwardian opulence, polished mahogany panels, a decanter of sherry on the side table, and windows framed by velvet curtains that promised privacy amid the journey's rattle. As the train lurched forward with a resonant whistle, London slipped away in a blur of rain-slicked lights, the Thames a silver serpent coiling into the night. No sooner had they settled, Hastings with his pipe, Poirot with a monograph on medieval poisons, than a knock echoed at the door. It swung open to reveal a tall, angular woman in a mink stole, her face a mask of patrician severity softened only by the rouge at her cheekbones. Behind her hovered a younger man, sleek as a panther in a dinner jacket, his smile too polished for sincerity. "Excuse the intrusion," the woman said, her voice carrying the clipped vowels of Belgravia. "Lady Eleanor Hargrove, and this is Mr. Victor Lang, my secretary. We're in the adjoining compartment. One hears such dreadful tales of these night trains. Bandits, you know, or worse. I wondered if you gentlemen might indulge an old lady's fancy and join us for cocktails in the dining car later. Safety in numbers, after all." Hastings, ever the gallant, rose at once. "Delighted, Lady Eleanor. I'm Captain Hastings, and this is my friend, Monsieur Hercule Poirot." Poirot inclined his head, his gaze lingering a fraction too long on the secretary's manicured nails. "Enchanté, madame, and monsieur," it is always a pleasure to travel with those who appreciate the communal spirit. There was a subtle arch to his brow, as if he had already catalogued the mink's provenance and the secretary's faintly accented English. As Lady Eleanor withdrew with a rustle of silk, Hastings leaned back, exhaling a plume of smoke. Well, that's a stroke of luck. Lady Hargrove, I've read about her husband, Sir Reginald. Industrial magnate, isn't he? Still mills up north, or something of the sort. Travelling with her, I suppose? Poirot tapped a finger against his temple, his expression meditative. Précisément. And yet, Hastings, observe, the mink is new, but the stole bears the faint scorch of a careless cigarette. The secretary's cufflinks are gold, but his shoes, Italian leather, ill-suited to English rain. Small things, mon ami, but they whisper of complications. Hastings laughed. You're incorrigible, Poirot. Always seeing mysteries where there are none. But as the train gathered speed, hurtling through the suburban gloom, Poirot's smile faded into something more contemplative. Outside, the shadows lengthened, and in the distance, the first stars pricked the canopy of clouds. Little did they know that the London Express carried not just passengers, but secrets heavy as lead, secrets that would soon demand the full muster of those legendary grey cells. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dining Car. The dining car of the night express was a rolling salon of Art Deco splendour, where crystal chandeliers swayed gently with the rhythm of the rails, casting prisms across starched linens and silver service. It was 8:30, and the air hummed with the low murmur of silverware on porcelain, the pop of corks from magnums of Veuve Clicquot, and the occasional trill of laughter that masked deeper undercurrents. Waiters in crisp white jackets glided like shadows, bearing trays of Dover sole and asparagus vinaigrette, while beyond the lace-curtained windows, the English countryside blurred into twilight's embrace, hedgerows and hamlets fleeing the onrushing locomotive. Poirot and Hastings entered arm in arm, the Belgian's cane tapping a staccato counterpoint to the wheel's ceaseless thrum. Lady Eleanor Hargrove had already claimed a corner table, her mink discarded like a shed skin across the banquette, revealing a gown of emerald taffeta that whispered with every gesture. Beside her sat Victor Lang, nursing a martini with the languid poise of a man who knew his allure was his chief asset. Across from them loomed a figure straight from the pages of a Kipling tale. Colonel Edmund Blackwood, retired from the Indian Army, his face a weathered map of the Raj, scarred cheek, walrus moustache, and eyes like polished agate beneath a thatch of silver hair. He puffed on a cheroot, the smoke wreathing his head like a nimbus of forgotten campaigns. Gentlemen, do join us," Lady Eleanor called, her voice a silver bell tempered by command. She gestured to the empty seats with a hand heavy with sapphires. Colonel Blackwood was just regaling us with tales of tiger hunts in the Terai. One does miss the excitement of empire, doesn't one? Hastings slid into place with a nod to the colonel, who grunted an acknowledgement around his cheroot. "Capital stuff, Colonel. I was out in Flanders myself. Mud and wire, not much glory there. But tigers? By Jove, that's the ticket." Poirot, settling with the precision of a watchmaker, inclined his head. "The tiger, Monsieur le Colonel. A noble beast, but one that teaches us much of the huntress within. It is not the claw that kills, but the patience of the stalk." His eyes, sharp as a scalpel, flicked over the table. The colonel's signet ring, etched with a regimental crest, Lady Eleanor's untouched champagne flute, Lang's fingers drumming an impatient tattoo on the linen. Blackwood barked a laugh, expelling a cloud of smoke that set the waiter coughing discreetly. Patience, eh? Damned right. Took me 3 days in a machon once, sweating like a coolie before that striped devil showed. But it was worth it. Pelt hangs in my club to this day. And you, Monsieur Poirot? I fancy you've stalked your share of beasts in your time. Seen your name in the papers, something about a murder on the Orient, wasn't it? Poirot's moustaches quivered with modest deflection. Ah, the newspapers, they embellish, n'est-ce pas? I am but a humble detective, a shepherd of truths. The real beasts, Colonel, are those that prowl the human heart. Lang leaned forward, his smile a crescent of white teeth, eyes gleaming with the predatory interest of a society climber. Human hearts? How poetic, Monsieur Poirot! But surely on a train like this, we're all safely penned sheep. No wolves among us, eh? His tone was light, but there was an edge to it, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Lady Eleanor sipped her champagne at last, her gaze lingering on Lang, with something akin to proprietorial fondness. Or was it calculation? Wolves, Victor. Don't be melodramatic. Though I must confess, this journey has me on edge. My husband, Sir Reginald, insisted on taking the earlier train to Edinburgh for some tedious business with his Scottish partners. He wired me this morning to follow alone. The man's so dreadfully practical. Romance is wasted on him. Hastings' fork midway to his mouth paused. Sir Reginald Hargrove, the Steel Baron, chap with the mills in Sheffield. I read he's expanding into shipbuilding. Big contracts with the Admiralty, they say. Precisely, Lady Eleanor replied, her lips curving in a wry smile. And precisely why he's insufferable. All ledgers and dividends. Victor here keeps things lively. She patted Lang's hand, a gesture that lingered just a heartbeat too long, drawing a flicker of amusement and something darker from the Colonel's eye. As the soup course arrived, consommé en tasse, steaming with the faint aroma of truffles, a new figure approached the table, halting the conversation like a shadow across the sun. He was a man of middling years, slight and stooped, with wire-rimmed spectacles perched on a beakish nose, and a waistcoat straining against a burgeoning paunch. In his hand, he clutched a worn leather attaché case, as if it were a talisman against the world's vulgarities. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a precise Oxford burr, laced with the diffidence of the Academy. "Dr. Felix Mortimer, at your service, chemist by trade, organic compounds, you know, travelling to a colloquium in Edinburgh on alkaloids. I couldn't help overhearing. The Colonel mentioned India. Fascinating place for botanicals. Cinchona bark saved more lives than any regiment, mark my words." Blackwood eyed him with the wariness of a fox scenting a ferret. "Chemist, eh? Jolly good. Ever brew up something to stiffen the spine for a charge? We could have used you at Omdurman." Mortimer chuckled, a dry rustle like pages turning. "Not quite, Colonel, though I dare say my elixirs have their own battlefield applications. Poisons, after all, are but medicines in the wrong dosage." He glanced at Poirot, a spark of recognition igniting. "Monsieur Poirot, an honour. Your monograph on toxicology, brilliant. The chapter on ricin derivatives inspired my own work." Poirot's response was a bow of the head, gracious yet probing. "You flatter me, docteur. But flattery is the sugar on the pill. It is the pill itself we must swallow. Tell me, what brings a man of your expertise to this express? A holiday from the laboratory's solitude?" "Oh, a bit of both," Mortimer replied, sliding into an empty chair uninvited, his case thumping onto the floor. "And perhaps a touch of curiosity. One hears whispers in academic circles of fortunes made and lost in the shadows of industry. Sir Reginald Hargrove's name crops up now and then. Something about experimental alloys requiring unusual catalysts. Lady Eleanor's fan snapped open, a flutter of ivory and lace. Really, Doctor, how intriguing! Reginald does dabble in such things, but surely not. The conversation eddied into lighter waters then. Gossip of debutante scandals, the latest West End review. But Poirot's gaze roamed, cataloguing the ripples. Lang's foot tapped beneath the table, a Morse code of impatience. Blackwood's cheroot had burned low, ash flaking onto his napkin like forgotten regrets. Mortimer's fingers traced the edge of his case, as if debating whether to unlock its secrets. And Lady Eleanor? Her laughter rang bright, but her eyes darted to the corridor, as if expecting a ghost to materialize from the swaying shadows. Hastings, oblivious to the undercurrents, raised his glass. To absent friends and safe travels, eh? The others echoed the toast, crystal chiming like a fragile promise. But as Poirot sipped his tisane, ever the abstainer from stronger spirits, he felt the first prickle of unease, a synapse firing in those vaunted grey cells. Whispers in the dining car were but the prelude. It was the silences between them that harboured the storm, and somewhere, in the locked heart of the train, that storm was gathering force. Chapter 3. The Midnight Cry. The night express cleaved through the midnight hours like a silver dagger, its rhythm a hypnotic lullaby of steel on steel, lulling the passengers into the false security of motion. Beyond the compartment windows, the landscape had surrendered to utter blackness. Fields and forests reduced to fleeting voids, punctuated only by the occasional spark of a distant farmstead, or the baleful eye of a signal box. It was well past 11, and the dining car had emptied, its chandeliers dimmed to a conspiratorial glow, leaving only the ghosts of cigar smoke and unfinished brandies to haunt the velvet banquettes. In their compartment, Poirot had retired to his bunk with the punctilious ritual of a man who treated sleep as a precision instrument. His waistcoat was neatly folded, his moustaches groomed to nocturnal perfection, and a volume of Montaigne lay open on his chest, its pages whispering philosophies of vice and virtue. Hastings, in the lower berth, snored softly, his dreams no doubt peopled by gallant charges and indifferent nurses. The legacy of war's kinder evasions. The scream came without prelude. A raw, guttural wail that sliced through the carriage walls like a shard of broken glass. It was feminine, laced with terror and something more primal, recognition. Poirot's eyes snapped open, his book tumbling to the floor with a muffled thud. He sat bolt upright, his heart a steady metronome where others might have raced. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, already swinging his legs over the bunk's edge. "Hastings, réveillez-vous!" Hastings jolted awake, his hand instinctively groping for a phantom Webley revolver. What the deuce? Bandits? Germans? He blinked in the dim lamplight, dishevelled and dazed, his pyjamas askew. Non, mon ami. Something far more English. A cry in the night. Poirot was already at the door, knotting his dressing gown with efficient grace, his cane in hand like a sceptre of inquiry. Come! We must see to it before panic spreads like influenza. The corridor was a tableau of startled silhouettes, doors cracking open like hesitant confessions, faces pale as moonlight peering out. From the direction of the first-class compartments came a clamour, muffled voices, the slap of slippers on carpet, and then Lady Eleanor's voice, shrill and commanding, "Reginald! Oh God, Reginald!" Poirot and Hastings pushed through the gathering knot of passengers, the air thick with the scent of fear sweat and stale cologne. At the end of the car, before a door emblazoned with a brass plaque, Compartment A, reserved for the elite, stood Lady Eleanor. Her emerald gown from dinner, replaced by a silk negligée that clung like a shroud. Victor Lang hovered at her elbow, his arm encircling her waist in a gesture that blurred the line between solace and possession. Behind them, the Colonel, clad in a threadbare dressing gown that spoke of harder times, puffed furiously on a fresh cheroot, his face a storm cloud. Dr. Mortimer lingered at the periphery, his spectacles askew, clutching that infernal attaché case as if it held the antidote to chaos. The conductor, a stout man named Wilkins with a moustache that rivaled Poirot's own, fumbled with a master key, his hands trembling. "It's locked from the inside, milady. Been that way since supper. Passengers always secure 'em for the night. I heard the scream myself, but—" "Break it down, man," Blackwood growled, his military bark cutting through the din. "Dash it all, there's a life at stake." But Poirot interposed himself with quiet authority, his voice a silken thread amid the fray. "Un moment, messieurs, dames. Panic is the thief of clarity. Conductor, you say it is locked? From within? And the scream, madam, it was you." Lady Eleanor turned to him, her face a porcelain mask cracked by anguish, tears carving rivulets through her powder. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, I thought I heard him call my name from behind the door. I pounded, and then nothing. But when I pressed my ear, oh, the silence was worse. I have a key, our keys match for emergencies, but it wouldn't turn. As if jammed. Reginald, my husband, he's in there." Lang's jaw tightened, his eyes flicking to the door with something akin to calculation. "Eleanor, darling, perhaps it's a nightmare. Sir Reginald's compartment is right next to ours. These old trains play tricks with sound." "Tricks?" Mortimer interjected, his voice a scalpel's edge, stepping forward with academic fervour. "Or perhaps indigestion, heart strain from overexertion. Industrialists like Hargrove pushed too hard. The arteries calcify, I could—" "Enough prattling," Blackwood snapped, rounding on the chemist. "If it's a medical matter, you're the man, but if it's foul play—" His gaze swept the group, lingering on Lang's possessive grip. "Well, we've a detective in our midst, haven't we? Monsieur Poirot, what say you? Shall we force it?" Poirot's eyes narrowed, absorbing the tableau. The door's gleaming lock, unmarred save for a faint scratch near the keyhole. Eleanor's key dangling from her trembling fingers, its bow engraved with intertwined initials. R&E, the faint acrid whiff emanating from beneath the door, like bitter almonds mingled with engine oil. "Non, Colonel. Force is for barbarians, method for gentlemen. Conductor, your master key. Try it now, s'il vous plaît, but gently, and all of you step back. Let the air breathe." Wilkins nodded, sweat beading on his brow, and inserted the key with a click that echoed like a verdict. It turned, but with resistance, a subtle grind, as if gears protested an unwelcome intruder. The door swung inward on oiled hinges, exhaling a gust of stale warmth laced with that same almondine tang. The compartment was a chamber of frozen opulence. A single brass bedstead with rumpled silk sheets, a marble-topped washstand bearing a cut crystal decanter half empty of brandy, and a Gladstone bag yawning open on the rack, spilling cufflinks and stock certificates like spilled secrets. Sir Reginald Hargrove lay sprawled across the bed, his corpulent form clad in a monogrammed pyjama top, one arm flung wide as if in supplication. His face was a grotesque rictus, mouth agape in a silent bellow, eyes bulging like a fish on a hook, skin mottled purple. Around his neck, A silken cord from the window blind was knotted with merciless precision, biting deep into the flesh. No signs of struggle marred the room. The Persian rug lay undisturbed. The electric lamp on the nightstand still burned with a steady, indifferent glow. Lady Eleanor staggered forward with a keening wail, only to be caught by Lang's arms. "Reginald! No! Who? How?" Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, went ashen. "Good Lord, Poirot! Strangled! In a locked room! It's impossible!" Poirot did not reply at once. He stepped inside with the reverence of a priest entering a confessional, his cane probing the carpet like a diviner's rod. The lock, yes, bolted from within, the key still in the escutcheon. The window, sealed tight against the rushing night. Its cords severed and repurposed for darker ends. And on the bedside table, a half-smoked cigarette in an onyx tray, its ash undisturbed, as if time itself had paused at the moment of execution. "Impossible?" Poirot echoed softly, his voice a murmur for Hastings alone. "Ah, but Hastings, nothing is impossible to the disordered mind, only improbable to the orderly. And here we have the grandest improbability of all." He straightened, turning to the stricken assembly in the doorway, his face a mask of grave resolve. "Messieurs, Madame, the London Express has become a hearse. Sir Reginald Hargrove is dead, murdered, and the killer is among us." A hush fell, broken only by the train's relentless surge, as the shadows in the corridor seemed to deepen, coiling like serpents around the feet of the innocent and the guilty. The midnight cry had awakened not just the passengers, but the inexorable machinery of justice, with Hercule Poirot at its inexorable heart. Chapter 4. The Sealed Chamber. The air in compartment A hung heavy, as if the very walls had absorbed the final rasp of Sir Reginald Hargrove's breath, and exhaled it back in languid, tainted waves. The electric lamp cast a merciless glare, turning the room into a stage set for tragedy. Shadows pooling in the corners like spilled ink. The victim's bloated features illuminated in stark relief, every wrinkle and vein a testament to life's cruel punctuation. Outside, the night express thundered on, oblivious to the stasis within, its wheels a dirge marking time for the dead. Poirot stood at the threshold, a sentinel of scrutiny, his gloved hand resting lightly on the doorframe, as if to commune with the wood's silent witnesses. The clamour in the corridor had subsided to a tense hush. The passengers herded back to their berths by the conductor's urgent whispers, lest hysteria cascade through the cars like dominoes. Only Hastings remained at his side, face grim as a battlefield dawn, while Wilkins hovered like a guilty confessor, wringing his cap in meaty fists. "Clear the compartment, if you please, Monsieur le Conducteur," Poirot said, his voice a velvet command that brooked no demurral. "No one enters until I have esriented myself. Hastings, mon vieux, fetch my case from our quarters, the black one, with the instruments, and a thermos of tisane, if the lounge car still brews it." Wilkins blanched. "But, sir, the police. We must wire ahead to the next stop, Doncaster. It's not 2 hours off. Scotland Yard'll want—" "Scotland Yard?" Poirot's eyebrows arched like drawn bows. "They will have their turn, certainly. But first, the facts must be gathered, not trampled like so many autumn leaves. The train is a sealed world, n'est-ce pas? What happens here stays here, until I say otherwise. Allez." As Wilkins retreated, muttering of regulations and his pension, Hastings dashed off with a nod, leaving Poirot alone with the corpse. He stepped inside at last, closing the door with a soft click that sealed the chamber anew. The lock engaged with a satisfying snick. Internal bolt thrown, key dangling innocently in the hole. He tested it twice, thrice, noting the smooth action, the absence of filings or grease to suggest tampering. "Impeccable," he murmured to the empty air, as if the devil himself turned the key. The body first. Sir Reginald, a man whose corpulence had once been the stuff of caricatures in Punch. The bluff industrialist, paunch straining against waistcoats embroidered with thistles. Now he lay supine, the silken cord embedded like a garrote from some Venetian intrigue, its frayed end trailing across the sheets. No defensive wounds, no scratches on the palms, no bruises on the wrists. Poirot leaned close, inhaling that peculiar almond scent again, faint but insistent, mingling with the brandy on the dead man's breath. "Prussic acid," he pondered aloud, his nose wrinkling, "or a red herring for the unwary. No, the ligature is the star, the rest, perhaps, the chorus." He straightened, his cane tracing the room's perimeter like a geomancer's wand. The window, double-glazed against the chill, latched from within, frost already beading on the outer pane from the night's breath. No draught, no gap for a hand or a tool. The ventilation grill above the door, too narrow for a mouse, let alone a murderer. The Gladstone bag, rifled, yes, but superficially. Papers askew, a jewel case unclasped to reveal a gold hunter watch, still ticking with mocking punctuality. And on the floor, half hidden by the bed's valance, a single cufflink, its mate missing from the pyjama sleeve. Poirot pocketed it with a flourish, his mind a whirlwind of permutations. Suicide staged? An accomplice vanished into ether? Or the impossible made flesh? A knock, tentative, like a thief's rap. Poirot opened the door a crack to admit Lady Eleanor, her eyes red-rimmed but dry now, flanked by Lang like a bodyguard of dubious intent. She clutched a lace handkerchief, twisting it as if to wring confession from the folds. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, her voice a fragile filament, "they say you are the one to turn to in such horrors. May I? He was my husband, after all. I must see him properly." Poirot's gaze softened, though his resolve did not. "Madame, the dead deserve dignity, but the living demand truth. A glimpse, then, but touch nothing. Observe, if you will, the disorder of the heart." She nodded, stepping in with the grace of a somnambulist, Lang at her heels like a shadow with opinions. Her breath caught at the sight, a hand flying to her throat, but she did not swoon. Hargrove women were made of sterner silk. Reginald, so still. He snored like a furnace, you know. I'd tease him about it in Biarritz. Her voice cracked, then steadied. "Who could do this? The door locked, you say, and no one passed our compartment. Victor heard nothing but the train." Lang nodded vigorously, his arms slipping around her shoulders, a gesture protective, yet laced with the subtle claim of a lover. "Quite right, Eleanor. I was reading Galsworthy, you know, the Forsyte Saga, until the scream. Our door was bolted. I checked it myself after dinner. And the Colonel's across the way. He'd have heard a scuffle." Poirot's eyes flicked to Lang's book, visible through the half-open door to their adjoining compartment. A slim volume of Smith in the City, not a Forsyte in sight. "Reading, monsieur? An excellent alibi for the insomniac. And you, madame, your key, if you please. We must test its fidelity." Lady Eleanor fumbled in her negligee pocket, producing the engraved key. Poirot inserted it into the lock, smooth as a diplomat's lie, no resistance. "It turns," he noted, handing it back. "Yet earlier you said it jammed? Curious. Perhaps the ghost of haste." "Ghosts," she echoed faintly, sinking onto the edge of the bed, careful of the body, her skirts pooling like spilled emeralds. Reginald believed in them, you know. From his grandfather's mills, workers claimed the machinery was haunted by the Luddites. Foolish, but it made him jump at shadows. A shadow stirred in the corridor. Colonel Blackwood, pipe clenched in teeth, his dressing gown belted like bandoliers. "Can't sleep with this rot going on," he grumbled, peering in uninvited. "Seen worse in the Khyber, but on a bloody train. What's the verdict, Poirot? Strangled by gin?" Poirot suppressed a sigh. Amateurs, always crowding the canvas. "The verdict, Colonel, awaits the inquest of method. The cord? From the blind, oui? Severed with what? Your penknife, perhaps? Or the nail file from Madame's vanity?" Blackwood bristled, his moustache quivering. "See here, I dash it, no. I was in my bunk, dreaming of polo ponies. But if you're casting lures, what about that quack Mortimer? Chemist, eh? Smells like motive. Hargrove's Mills used his sort for dyes or what not. Poison in the brandy, maybe, then the cord to finish?" "Speculation, mon colonel," Poirot chided gently, "is the fog before the lighthouse. It blinds more than it guides." Yet, even as he spoke, his grey cells hummed. Mortimer's alkaloids, the almond whiff, coincidence, or the devil's breadcrumb? Hastings returned then, breathless, with the case and a steaming thermos. "Tisane, Poirot, and the lounge cars in uproar. Word spreading, some dowagers fainted, claiming the ghost of Jack the Ripper." Poirot poured a cup, inhaling its herbal balm like a talisman. Ghosts again. How the English love their spectres. But this murder is no apparition. It bleeds real blood, real greed. He turned to the assembly, his voice rising to a clarion. "Monsieur, madame, the chamber is sealed, the door a virgin to violence. No entry, no exit, save by the hand of God or the devil's sleight. Yet Sir Reginald did not hang himself. The angle is wrong, the knot too artful. Suicide, non. Accident, ridicule. Murder, then, in a box from which the cat cannot escape." Lady Eleanor's eyes widened, searching his face. "Then the killer. How? Magic?" "Magic?" Poirot's laugh was a soft trill, like champagne bubbles in crystal. "Ah no, madame. Merely method. The impossible is but the untrodden path, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall tread it." As he ushered them out, relocking the door with a finality that echoed through the car, the train plunged into a tunnel, plunging the corridor into Stygian dark. For a heartbeat, all was void. Then light flooded back, revealing faces etched with dread. The sealed chamber held its secrets close, but Poirot's mind was a forge, hammering clues into shape. The game, as ever, was afoot, and the board, this hurtling steel beast, was set for checkmate. Chapter 5. Portraits of Suspicion. Dawn crept upon the night express like a hesitant thief, fingering the ear, horizon with pale gold, as the train rattled through the flatlands of Nottinghamshire. The murder in compartment A had cast a pall over the carriages, turning the once lively murmur of breakfast trays into a funeral procession of clinking silver and averted eyes. The conductor had wired ahead to Doncaster, where a brace of local constables awaited, stolid Yorkshiremen, no doubt, ill-equipped for the subtleties of a locked-room enigma. But Poirot had prevailed upon Wilkins to delay the handover until midday. "The fish must be netted before it spoils," he had insisted, his grey cells already weaving a web of inquiries. In the lounge car, transformed into an impromptu salon of suspicion, Poirot held court amid the wreckage of a continental breakfast. Croissants flaking like guilty consciences, coffee urns steaming with unspoken accusations. The passengers, those few who dared venture from their berths, gathered in a semicircle of armchairs, the velvet upholstery seeming to swallow their unease. Hastings flanked Poirot, notebook in hand, his moustache drooping with the gravity of the task. Lady Eleanor sat primly, her widow's weeds hastily assembled from a black crepe travelling dress, Victor Lang at her side like a vigilant spaniel. Colonel Blackwood nursed a brandy-laced tea, his cheroot unlit for once, while Dr. Mortimer perched on the edge of a pouf, his attaché case a barrier against the fray. Poirot sipped his tisane, the steam curling like a question mark. "Messieurs, madame," he began, his voice a measured cadence that commanded silence without raising in pitch. "We are all prisoners of circumstance this morning, trapped not by iron bars, but by the iron rails that bear us onward. Sir Reginald Hargrove lies dead, strangled in a chamber sealed tighter than the vaults of the Bank of England, yet someone among us, or perhaps a phantom of our collective pasts, holds the cord that ended him. I propose we paint portraits, eh? Not with brushes, but with truths. We shall begin with you, Madame la Veuve. If you please, your canvas." Lady Eleanor's fingers tightened on her handkerchief, the lace edges fraying like her composure. She met Poirot's gaze with the defiant poise of aristocracy under siege, her sapphire ring catching the light like a fallen star. "What more is there to say, Monsieur Poirot? Reginald and I, we were married these 15 years. Arranged, of course, his father's mills and my dowry from the Devon estates. He built an empire of steel. I tended the hearth. Lately, though," her voice trailed, a sigh escaping like steam from a kettle, "he grew distant, buried in ledgers, meetings with those grasping Scots partners of his. I came north to mend fences, but he took the earlier train. Business first, he wired. Victor was to join us later, a buffer against the tedium." Lang leaned forward, his hand brushing hers in a tableau of solace that bordered on theatre. "Eleanor speaks true. Sir Reginald tolerated me, the pretty boy, he called me half in jest. But I swear, Poirot, I had no quarrel with him. My role was letters, appointments, nothing that touches the heart of his affairs." Poirot's eyes, twin gimlets, fixed on Lang's manicured digits. "Letters, monsieur? How convenient! And yet, in the dining car last night, you spoke of wolves among sheep. A metaphor, perhaps, for the pack that circles a lone industrialist. Tell me, what did Sir Reginald's ledgers conceal that might invite such predation?" Lang's smile faltered, a crack in the porcelain. "Predation? Dash it, man, you're barking up the wrong tree. Hargrove was solvent, expanding even, shipbuilding contracts, as Captain Hastings mentioned. If anyone's sniffing around fortunes, it's those Edinburgh bankers, squeezing for a larger cut." Hastings cleared his throat, pencil poised. "Speaking of contracts, Lady Eleanor, any enemies? Union troubles in the mills? I've heard whispers of strikes up north." She hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window where coalfields scrolled by like a sepia frieze. Enemies? Reginald trod on toes, yes. The unions called him a robber baron. Competitors whispered of cornered markets, but murder on a train, it's absurd. A pause, then softer. "There was a man once, Jonathan Hale, a rival from Manchester. Lost everything in a buyout 5 years back. Swore vengeance in the courts, but it came to naught. Haley's a ghost now. Vanished to the colonies, they say." "Ghosts?" Poirot echoed, his finger steepled against his lips. "Always with the ghosts. But ghosts do not knot cords, madame. They merely haunt." He turned to Blackwood, who shifted in his seat like a chess piece under threat. "And you, Colonel, a soldier's life, full of campaigns. But what of this particular field? You knew Sir Reginald." Blackwood's jowls quivered, his agate eyes hardening to flint. "Knew him. "Aye, from the war. We served together in the Somme, mud up to our necks, Fritz lobbing shells like cricket balls. Hargrove was a quartermaster then, supplying the lines. Saved my battalion's bacon once. Diverted munitions from some brass hat's pet project. Owed him a debt, truth be told. After the armistice, he pulled strings for my pension when the cuts came. Travelled up to see him in Edinburgh this week. Old mates catching up, swapping war stories over whiskey." Poirot's head tilted, a bird sighting prey. "A debt, you say? How touching! And yet debts can sour, Colonel, like milk left too long in the sun. What if this reunion unearthed old resentments? A wartime slight, perhaps? Hargrove's supplies, were they always so timely?" The Colonel's pipe stem snapped between his teeth, splintering with a crack. "See here, you infernal frog-eater. Frenchman," Poirot corrected mildly, unperturbed. "But proceed, mon Colonel. Your indignation is a colour on the palate." Blackwood deflated, rubbing his scarred cheek. Timely enough. Though there was that business in 17, rumours of short shipments, lads going, without shells, while Hargrove's chums in London profited. Cleared him, of course. Court-martial fizzled. Water under the bridge, or so I thought. Hastings jotted furiously, his brow furrowed. Rumours of profiteering? That could stir a hornet's nest, especially with the depression biting. But, Colonel, your compartment across from the scene. You heard nothing? No footsteps, no gasps? "Nothing but the bloody train," Blackwood growled. "Slept like the dead. Ironic, eh? Woke to Eleanor's caterwauling." Poirot nodded, filing the denial away like a specimen slide. "The dead do sleep soundly. Now, Dr. Mortimer, your portrait, if you will. A chemist, versed in elixirs and essences. That almond scent in the air last night, it whispers of your domain, no? Cyanide, perhaps, in the brandy decanter? A swift poison, then the cord to disguise the deed?" Mortimer adjusted his spectacles, the wire rims glinting like conspiracy. "Cyanide? Perish the thought, Monsieur Poirot. My work is legitimate. Pharmaceuticals for Hargrove's mills, actually. Catalysts for hardening alloys. Nothing more sinister than benzene derivatives. I boarded in London to discuss a new formula safeguarding steel against corrosion. Sir Reginald was keen, promised a fat contract if trials panned out." "Contracts again?" Poirot mused, his gaze probing the attaché case like an X-ray. "The lifeblood of empires, and the poison of the envious. You carry samples, Doctor? Vials that might slip?" Mortimer patted the case with paternal affection. "Samples, yes, locked away, triple-sealed. But if you're implying, good heavens, man, I barely knew the fellow. Our meeting was to be in Edinburgh, not en route. As for the scent, brandy and bitters I'd wager. Hargrove's vice. I smelled it on his breath at a conference last month." Lady Eleanor stirred, her voice a lash. "Enough of poisons! Reginald was a brute, yes! Drove men to ruin, ignored me for his machines. But he didn't deserve this. Victor, tell them we're innocent." Lang squeezed her hand, his eyes darting to Poirot like a cornered fox. "We are, old chap, all of us, strangers thrown together by fate, or coincidence." "Coincidence?" Poirot's laugh was a soft explosion, rich with irony. "Ah, monsieur, coincidence is the thief's best friend, the one who picks the pocket while you look away. But in my experience, it is rarer than a flawless diamond." He rose, cane tapping the floor like a gavel. "Our portraits are sketched, but the shadows lurk. Rest if you can, the constables await, but remember, the killer watches, even now, and Hercule Poirot, he listens." As the group dispersed, Blackwood to his pipe, Mortimer to his case, Eleanor and Lang retreating arm in arm, the lounge car emptied, leaving only the echo of suspicions. Hastings closed his notebook with a snap. "Well, Poirot, motives aplenty, debts, rivals, jilted wives, but how? The locked door mocks us." Poirot's eyes gleamed, fixed on the racing landscape. How, Hastings? Patience! The portraits reveal the faces, but the hands, the hands betray, and soon they shall tremble. The train whistle shrilled, a cry of defiance against the gathering storm, as the first threads of the web began to tighten. Chapter 6. Echoes from the Past. The night express barreled through the grey dawn, its iron heart pounding as relentlessly as the questions now pulsing through Hercule Poirot's mind. The lounge car, once a haven of convivial chatter, had become a crucible of tension, its air thick with the unspoken weight of secrets. The passengers had dispersed after Poirot's probing, retreating to their compartments like chess pieces, withdrawing to shadowed squares. But the game was far from over, and Poirot, ever the Grandmaster, knew that the next move required delving into the murky waters of history, where motives festered, like wounds left untended. He had requisitioned the conductor's small office, a cramped nook adjacent to the dining car, its walls lined with timetables and a single electric bulb flickering like a guilty conscience. Poirot sat at the narrow desk, his black case open to reveal an array of tools: magnifying glass, tweezers, a notebook bound in Moroccan leather. Hastings stood by the door, arms crossed, his face a map of frustration, as he watched Poirot examine the cufflink retrieved from Sir Reginald's compartment, a silver oval etched with a thistle, its pin bent as if wrenched in haste. "Dash it, Poirot," Hastings ventured, breaking the silence. "We've got a widow with a wandering eye, a secretary who's too slick by half, a colonel with war stories, and a chemist who smells of trouble. But that locked door, how's a killer to slip in and out like a ghost? And this cufflink, Hargrove's, surely. The thistle's his family crest, isn't it?" Poirot's lips curled in a faint enigmatic smile as he turned the cufflink under the lamp's glare. "The thistle, oui, a symbol of Scotland, of Hargrove's pride. But observe, mon ami, the pin is bent, yet the shirt cuff was pristine, no tear. This was not torn in struggle, it was dropped, deliberately or in error. A clue, Hastings, or a taunt?" He set it aside, his fingers steepled. "But you are correct. The past whispers louder than the present. Let us summon the colonel again. His tales of the Somme, they have a resonance." Hastings fetched Colonel Blackwood, who entered with the reluctance of a man summoned to a court-martial. His dressing gown had been replaced by a tweed suit, its elbows worn to a shine, and his pipe was lit now, puffing acrid clouds that curled like spectres. He sank into the chair opposite Poirot, his scarred cheek twitching as if it remembered old shrapnel. "More questions, Poirot," Blackwood growled, his voice gravelly from years of barked commands. "Thought I'd said my piece. Hargrove's dead, and I'm as stumped as the next man. What's this about, then?" Poirot leaned forward, his eyes locking onto Blackwood's like a fencer sighting a gap. "The Somme, Colonel. You spoke of debts owed to Sir Reginald, munitions diverted, lives saved, but also of rumours, short shipments, profiteering. Such whispers do not die quietly, no? They linger, like smoke from your cheroot. Tell me of 1917. What did Hargrove do that turned comrades into creditors?" Blackwood's pipe trembled, a fleck of ash falling to the desk. He brushed it away with a calloused hand, his gaze drifting to the window where the Yorkshire moors loomed, stark and unforgiving. "You're a bloodhound, aren't you? Very well. 17 was a hell of mud and madness. Hargrove was no soldier, quartermaster, pushing papers while we bled. But he had pull, knew which palms to grease in Whitehall. My battalion was cut off near Passchendaele, shells running dry. Hargrove rerouted a shipment meant for some toffs pet offensive. Got us the guns we needed, but it cost him. Some brass hat, General Maitland, I think, lost face, swore Hargrove was skimming profits, selling surplus to private firms. Court-martial sniffed around, found nothing concrete. Hargrove walked, but the stain stuck. Men like Jonathan Hale, his rival, Eleanor mentioned, fanned the flames, claimed Hargrove bankrupted honest suppliers. Poirot's pencil scratched in his notebook, each stroke deliberate as a surgeon's cut. Hale again, a name that recurs, like a motif in Wagner. You knew him? Met him once, in 19, Blackwood admitted, his voice softening to a reluctant murmur. Manchester chap, wiry, eyes like a ferret. He was in munitions too, till Hargrove outbid him for a steel contract. Hale's firm folded. Swore he'd see Hargrove pay, but it was bluster. Last I heard, he'd sailed for Canada. Bankrupt, broken, dead end, Poirot. Dead ends, Poirot mused, are often detours the clever take to mislead. But tell me, Colonel, your reunion with Hargrove, this journey to Edinburgh, planned long ago, or a sudden impulse? Blackwood hesitated, his pipe going cold. Spur of the moment, got a wire from him last week. Old time's sake, Blackie, he wrote, whiskey and war stories at the Caledonian. Seemed harmless enough. I owed him, like I said. Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the flicker of evasion. A wire, convenient, and yet your compartment faces his, across the corridor. A scream woke Lady Eleanor, but you, a soldier, trained to wake at a pin's drop, heard nothing. Blackwood's fist clenched, knuckles whitening. I'm no spring chicken, Poirot. Sleep heavy these days. Brandy helps. If you're implying I'm in on this, implications, Poirot interjected smoothly, are but the scaffolding of truth. Merci, Colonel. You may go, for now. As Blackwood stormed out, leaving a trail of pipe smoke, Poirot turned to Hastings. The past, Hastings, it is a palimpsest, layers upon layers. Hargrove's war was not only against Germans, but against men like Hale, men like Maitland, and perhaps men like Blackwood, whose debts weigh heavier than gratitude. Hastings frowned, flipping through his notes. But Hale's in Canada, or dead. And Blackwood's story holds water, doesn't it? A soldier's loyalty, a favour repaid, unless he's lying about sleeping through the scream. Précisément, Poirot said, tapping the cufflink. Lies are like footprints in snow. They betray even when covered. Let us see another witness. The conductor, Wilkins, his master key, his trembling hands. He knows more than he tells. Wilkins entered, cap in hand, his moustache drooping like a wilting fern. He was a man built for routine, not inquisition, and his eyes darted to the door as if longing for escape. Monsieur Poirot, sir, I've done all I can, kept the passengers calm, wired Doncaster. The yard's sending a man, Inspector Japp, they say. Be here by noon. Japp, mon ami. Poirot's face brightened, then sobered. Excellent. But until he arrives, you are my eyes, monsieur. The lock on compartment A. You said it was jammed when Lady Eleanor tried her key, yet your master key turned it. How so? Wilkins shifted, his boots scuffing the linoleum. Dunno, sir. These locks, old, finicky. Sometimes they stick if you don't know the trick. Mine's got a bit of give. You wiggle it, see? Hers might have caught wrong. Or, he trailed off, swallowing hard. Or, Poirot pressed, his voice a velvet blade. Or someone jammed it deliberate-like, Wilkins mumbled. There's a trick, bit of wax or putty in the keyhole, stops a key cold. Washes out easy, though, under a tap. Didn't check for it, panicked, you know, with her ladyship screaming. Poirot's eyes gleamed, a hunter scenting blood. Wax, a simple ruse, yet elegant. And you saw no one near compartment A before the scream? No one loitering, no tray left unattended? Wilkins shook his head, then paused, brow furrowing. Well, there was a tray, now you mention it. Outside the chemist's door. Mortimer, that is. Tea service, left from supper. Cup was tipped over, saucer cracked. Thought it was just clumsy staff, but, Poirot finished, it could be the footprint of our fox. Merci, Wilkins. You have been most illuminating. As the conductor shuffled out, Poirot leaned back, his fingers drumming a silent tattoo. Hastings, the past is not dead. It walks among us, in wax and whispers. The cufflink, the jammed lock, the spilled tea, they are echoes, no? Of a war not yet ended, of a man whose empire built enemies as surely as it built ships. Hastings scratched his head, bewildered. You think this Hale chap's back from Canada? Or someone acting for him? But the locked room, Poirot, it's a devil's puzzle. A puzzle, oui, Poirot agreed, rising with the grace of a cat. But the pieces are falling. Hastings. And when they fit, the portrait of our killer will be no ghost, but flesh and blood. Outside, the moors gave way to industrial sprawl, chimneys belching smoke like dragons roused. The train hurtled toward Doncaster, and toward truths that echoed from a past too long buried. Chapter 7. The Alchemist's Shadow. The night express pressed onward, its iron pulse a metronome to the gathering storm of suspicion within its crimson carriages. The hour was nearing 10, and the lounge car, though still cloaked in the sombre aftermath of murder, buzzed with the nervous energy of passengers whispering behind gloved hands. The Yorkshire landscape beyond the windows had softened into rolling hills, flecked with sheep like scattered pearls. But inside, the air was taut as a bowstring. Poirot, undeterred by the looming arrival of Inspector Japp at Doncaster, had resolved to deepen his inquest, his grey cells humming with the precision of a tuning fork. The almond scent, the jammed lock, the bent cufflink, these were not mere fragments, but threads in a tapestry he was determined to unravel. He had summoned Dr. Felix Mortimer to the conductor's office, where the flickering bulb cast gaunt shadows across the chemist's sallow face. Mortimer entered clutching his attaché case like a shield, his spectacles glinting with defensive wariness. Poirot sat at the desk, his tisane cooling in its cup, while Hastings leaned against the wall, notebook open, his pencil poised like a bayonet. The cramped space felt like a confessional, and Mortimer, with his stooped shoulders and ink-stained fingers, seemed less a scientist than a penitent awaiting absolution. "Dr. Mortimer," Poirot began, his voice smooth as a diplomat's handshake, "you are a man of science, of precision. Yet murder is a messy art, no? Let us speak of your trade. Alkaloids, you said, compounds for Sir Reginald's mills. But last night, in the dining car, you spoke of poisons being medicines misapplied. A curious remark when a man lies dead, with the scent of almonds on his breath." Mortimer's lips twitched, a nervous tic masquerading as a smile. "Almonds? Surely you jest, Monsieur Poirot. Cyanide's too theatrical, crude even. My work is subtler. Catalysts for steel alloys, anti-corrosives. Hargrove's new shipyard venture needed compounds to withstand salt water. I was to present a formula in Edinburgh, perfectly legitimate." Poirot's eyes narrowed, twin lanterns piercing the fog. Legitimate, oui. But the nose does not lie, Docteur. That scent in compartment A, it lingers in the mind like a note of discord in Beethoven. You carry samples, you said. In that case, perhaps, may I see? Mortimer hesitated, his fingers tightening on the leather handle. Then, with a sigh that bordered on theatrical, he unlatched the case, revealing a velvet-lined interior cradling glass vials, each stoppered and labelled in meticulous script. Here, see for yourself. Sodium, benzoate, quinoline derivatives, nothing sinister. All sealed, as I said last night. Triple locked, tamper-proof. Poirot leaned forward, his magnifying glass catching the light as he inspected the vials. One, labelled Catalyst X7, bore a faint residue on its cork, as if handled carelessly. And this one? He asked, tapping it gently with his cane. Its purpose? A proprietary blend, Mortimer replied too quickly. Accelerates chromium bonding. Hargrove's engineers requested it for hull plating. Trade secret, I'm afraid. Secrets? Poirot mused, leaning back. How they multiply, like bacteria in a petri dish. Tell me, Docteur, did Sir Reginald's secrets ever cross your laboratory bench? His mills, his shipyards, they consumed chemicals, yes, but also men. Competitors like Jonathan Hale, perhaps, whose ruin you mentioned so casually. Mortimer adjusted his spectacles, a bead of sweat gleaming at his temple. Hale. A name from the margins, Monsieur Poirot. I knew of him. Everyone in the trade did. His firm supplied dyes before Hargrove's mergers crushed him. Bitter man, by all accounts. But I'm a chemist, not a gossip. My dealings with Hargrove were strictly professional. Hastings, unable to resist, interjected. Professional, eh? But that spilled tea tray outside your compartment, Wilkins mentioned it. Clumsy or convenient? A distraction while someone tampered with Hargrove's door. Mortimer's face flushed, his voice rising to a squeak. Tampering! Preposterous! I ordered tea after dinner. Earl Grey, dreadful stuff, too bitter. Knocked it over myself, reaching for my journal. If you're suggesting I slipped out to strangle a man I barely knew, calm, Doctor, Poirot soothed, though his eyes were relentless. I suggest nothing yet, but the tray, the tea, they are brushstrokes on our canvas. And this scent of almonds, it haunts none. Perhaps not cyanide, but something akin. Amygdalin, perhaps, or a derivative from your proprietary blends. Mortimer snapped his case shut, the click echoing like a gavel. Amygdalins in peach pits, not my vials. You're fishing, Poirot, and I'm no trout. I was in my compartment, reading, chemical journals, mind you, when that scream woke the car. Ask the steward, he saw me. Poirot's smile was a razor wrapped in silk. Oh, I shall ask Docteur. The steward, the shadows, they all have tales to tell. Merci for your candour. You may go. As Mortimer retreated, his case clutched like a talisman. Hastings shook his head. Slippery as an eel, that one. You think he's hiding something, Poirot? Those vials. Could one be a poison, disguised as a catalyst? Possible, Poirot replied, his fingers drumming the desk. But the poison is not the cord, Hastings. The cord killed Hargrove, neatly, deliberately. The scent? It may be a diversion, a magician's flourish to distract from the knot. We must look closer, not at the vials, but at the man who carries them. His fear, it is not of guilt, but of exposure. A knock interrupted. Wilkins, his face ashen. Monsieur Poirot, sir. Trouble. Lady Eleanor's in a state. Says she's found something in her compartment. Won't show anyone but you. Poirot rose, cane in hand, his expression alight with anticipation. Alors, the plot thickens, like a roux before the feast. Lead on, Wilkins, and Hastings, bring your notebook. The past may echo, but the present screams for attention. They followed Wilkins to Lady Eleanor's compartment, where she stood by the narrow bunk, her face pale as bone china. In her trembling hand, she held a folded sheet of paper, its edges yellowed as if kissed by time. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, her voice a threadbare tapestry of dread. "I found this, slipped under my pillow, as if by a ghost. It's from him, from Reginald." Poirot took the letter, unfolding it with gloved fingers. The handwriting was bold, scrawled in black ink, dated a week prior. "Eleanor, if I die, know it was no accident. The vulture's circle, Hale's shadow looms. Trust no one, not even those closest." R.H. below, a single word was scratched, almost illegible. Canada. Hastings gasped. "Good Lord, Jonathan Hale again, back from the colonies? But how—" Poirot's eyes gleamed, the letter a torch in the labyrinth. "How indeed? The alchemist's shadow stretches far, Hastings, across oceans, across years. This letter is no ghost's work, but a living hand's, and that hand, it trembles with purpose." He folded the note, tucking it into his waistcoat. "Madame, guard your courage. The express carries us to truth, but the journey grows perilous." As they stepped back into the corridor, the train's whistle keened, a banshee's cry over the moors. The alchemist's shadow, Hale, Mortimer, or another, loomed larger, its edges sharpening with every mile. Poirot's web was tightening, but the spider remained elusive, hidden in the echoes of a past that refused to stay buried. Chapter 8. Threads of Deception. The night express hurtled through the Yorkshire dales, its wheels a relentless chant against the rails, as if urging the truth to surface before the looming stop at Doncaster. The morning light, now sharp and unforgiving, pierced the lace curtains of the lounge car, casting filigreed shadows that danced like the half-truths Poirot was determined to unravel. The discovery of Sir Reginald's letter, its cryptic warning of vultures and Jonathan Hale's shadow, had set the passengers' nerves alight, like a match to dry tinder. Whispers of betrayal and vengeance swirled, and Poirot, ever the maestro of chaos, prepared to pluck the next thread from the tangled skein of motive and opportunity. Back in the conductor's office, Poirot sat with the letter spread before him, its ink as stark as a battlefield dispatch. Hastings paced the cramped space, his notebook bristling with jotted clues, his face a storm of frustration. "This letter, Poirot, it's dynamite. Hale's name again, and Canada? If he's back, he's our man, surely. But how the devil did he get on this train, strangle Hargrove in a locked room, and vanish? It's like chasing a phantom." Poirot's fingers traced the letter's edges, his eyes half closed as if listening to a distant melody. "A phantom, Hastings? No, the hand that penned this is flesh, not mist. The paper, observe, it is heavy, watermarked, from Hargrove's personal stationery. Yet the ink is fresh, not faded, and the fold under the pillow. Too crisp for a week's concealment. This was placed recently, perhaps last night, to stir the pot of our suspicions." Hastings stopped mid-stride, jaw dropping. "You mean it's a plant? A forgery? But who dare? Lady Eleanor? Lang? They were in the next compartment." "Patience, mon ami," Poirot soothed, his voice a velvet anchor. "The forgery is a thread, but not the whole cloth. We must tug gently, lest it snap. Let us speak to the steward. Our friend Wilkins mentioned a tea-tray, a cracked saucer outside Mortimer's door. Small things, Hastings, but they are the stitches that hold the lie together." They summoned the steward, a wiry youth named Thomas, barely 20, with a mop of ginger hair and freckles that seemed to quiver under scrutiny. He stood rigid in the office doorway, his uniform slightly askew, as if he'd dressed in haste after a sleepless night. "Sirs, I swear I've told all I know," he began, voice cracking like thin ice. "I was serving supper till 10, then cleared trays. Dr. Mortimer's tea was out when I passed, knocked over, like he said. I didn't touch it, on my honour." Poirot's gaze was a gentle inquisition, his cane resting lightly on his knee. "Honour is a fine thing, Thomas, but truth is finer. The tray, describe it. Every detail, s'il vous plaît. The saucer, the cup, the stains." Thomas swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Well, sir, it was the usual. Silver tray, bone china cup, saucer with a gold rim. The cup was tipped, tea spilled across the tray, dark and sticky. Saucer had a crack like it had been dropped. I meant to clean it, but then the scream came and, well, it was all a muddle." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes glinting like polished obsidian. "Sticky, you say? And dark? Earl Grey, perhaps, as Dr. Mortimer claimed? Or something less innocent?" Thomas blinked, flustered. "Earl Grey, I reckon. Smelled strong, bitter-like. I didn't taste it, mind. But there was a cloth on the tray, too, a napkin crumpled with a spot of something red. Thought it was jam at first, but—" He trailed off, eyes widening as if realizing he'd stepped into a trap. "Red?" Hastings interjected, pencil flying. "Blood, you mean? Good Lord, why didn't you say so sooner?" I wasn't sure, sir." Thomas stammered. "It was just a spot. Could have been anything. Lipstick, wine. With all the commotion, I forgot till now." Poirot's smile was a crescent of satisfaction. "The mind forgets, Thomas, but the eye remembers. This napkin, where is it now?" Thomas paled. I cleared the tray after the scream, sir. Took it to the galley. The napkin's likely in the laundry bin with the linens from supper." "Fetch it," Poirot commanded, his tone brooking no delay. "And touch nothing else. The threads of deception unravel quickly when pulled." As Thomas scurried off, Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression alight with purpose. "The red spot, Hastings. It is a beacon in the fog. Blood, lipstick, wine, or perhaps something more alchemical, as our friend Mortimer might concoct. But first, let us revisit Lady Eleanor and her shadow, Monsieur Lang. The letter under her pillow. It begs questions of intimacy and intent." They found Lady Eleanor in her compartment, seated on the bunk, Victor Lang at her side like a knight guarding a besieged queen. The black crepe dress clung to her like a shroud, but her eyes burned with a defiance that belied her grief. Lang's hand rested on hers, his dinner jacket replaced by a sombre grey suit, though his cufflinks, gold, not silver, gleamed with calculated elegance. "Monsieur Poirot," Eleanor began, her voice steady but strained, "this letter, it's haunted me all morning. Reginald's hand, his words, yet you think it false. Why would anyone do such a thing?" Poirot settled into the compartment's single chair, his cane across his knees like a sceptre. "Why, madame? To direct the hounds, perhaps? To point us toward a ghost like Jonathan Hale, while the true fox slips away? Tell me, when did you last see this letter before it appeared under your pillow?" Eleanor frowned, her fingers twisting the sapphire ring. I don't know. Reginald kept his papers locked in his study at home. He was paranoid, always locking drawers, checking seals. If he wrote this, he never showed me. I found it this morning when I reached for my prayer book." Lang nodded, his voice smooth as polished marble. "She's right, Poirot. We were together all night, bolted in, as I said. No one could have slipped in without waking us. And that scream, Eleanor's, it was genuine. I'd stake my life on it." "Your life, monsieur?" Poirot's tone was light, but his eyes were daggers. "A bold wager, but let us consider. The letter mentions Hale, a man ruined by Hargrove. You, Monsieur Lang, were his secretary, privy to his correspondence, his enemies. Did Hale's name ever cross your desk? Or perhaps your lips? Lang's smile tightened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. Hale? Never met the man. Reginald mentioned him once or twice. A has-been, washed up in the colonies. If this letter's a fake, it's someone else's game. Maybe Mortimer. He's got the brains for it, and that case of his smells like trouble. Poirot's fingers drummed the cane's silver head. Trouble, oui. But trouble is a mirror. It reflects the hand that stirs it. Madame, monsieur, I thank you. We shall speak again. As they stepped into the corridor, Thomas returned, breathless, clutching a crumpled napkin stained with a faint crimson smudge. Poirot examined it under his magnifying glass, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed the fabric. Not blood, he murmured, nor lipstick. Wax, Hastings, red sealing wax, melted and smeared. The kind used to jam a lock, perhaps, or to seal a forged letter. Hastings gaped. Wax? Then someone did tamper with the lock. But who? Mortimer? Lang, the steward himself. Poirot folded the napkin, tucking it into his waistcoat. The threads tighten, mon ami. Deception weaves its web, but the spider cannot hide forever. The letter, the wax, the almond scent, they are not accidents, but arrows pointing to intent. And that intent, it is closer than we think. The train's whistle shrieked, signalling the approach to Doncaster. Time was narrowing, like the tracks converging on the horizon, and Poirot's mind raced to knot the threads before the constable's boots trampled the delicate weave of clues. The alchemist's shadow lingered, but now it had a sharper edge, a human edge, poised to strike again. Chapter 9. The Vanishing Clue. The night express thundered toward Doncaster, its iron rhythm a countdown to the arrival of Inspector Japp and the inevitable intrusion of officialdom. The morning had grown sharp, the sun slicing through the carriage windows to expose every dust mote and doubt in stark relief. In the conductor's office, Poirot sat like a general plotting a campaign. The stained napkin with its telltale smear of red sealing wax spread before him like a battle map. The letter, the lock, the almond scent. Each clue was a star in his constellation of suspicion, but one star was missing, and its absence gnawed at his meticulous soul. Hastings, ever the faithful adjutant, leaned over the desk, his notebook a palimpsest of scrawled theories. That wax, Poirot. It's a dead giveaway. Someone jammed the lock to trap Hargrove, then slipped out and planted that letter to pin it on this Hale fellow. But the cufflink, where's its mate? You said it was dropped, not torn. If we could find the other one, précisément, Hastings, Poirot interjected, his voice a quiet thunderclap. The cufflink is our Ariadne's thread, leading us through the labyrinth. But threads can vanish, no? Let us search, discreetly, for its twin. It may lie in a pocket, a valise, or a guilty hand. He rose, cane tapping with purpose. We begin with the compartments nearest the crime. Lady Eleanor's, Lang's, the Colonel's, and Mortimer's. The steward, Thomas, will assist. But mark me, Hastings, the killer watches, and a clue found is a clue endangered. They enlisted Thomas, who, still pale from his earlier grilling, led them to the first-class corridor. The passengers had been confined to the lounge car under Wilkins' watchful eye, leaving the compartments eerily silent, their doors like sentinels guarding secrets. Poirot began with Lady Eleanor's quarters, adjacent to the murder scene, its air heavy with the scent of her violet perfume. The bunk was neatly made, a prayer book open to a psalm of lamentation, but no cufflink gleamed among the satin pillows or in the folds of her travelling case. Lang's compartment, next door, was a study in calculated elegance. A silk tie draped over a chair, a bottle of Florist cologne on the washstand, a copy of Smith in the City, not Galsworthy, mocking his earlier alibi. Poirot's gloved fingers probed the crevices of the bunk, the seams of a leather valise, but found only lint and a stray cigarette paper. "No cufflink," he murmured, "but the lie about the book, it grows roots, Hastings." Colonel Blackwood's quarters across the corridor were a contrast in austerity. A single army-issue trunk, a faded photograph of a younger Blackwood astride a polo pony, a tin of cheroots spilling ash like careless memories. Poirot lifted the trunk's lid, sifting through medals and moth-eaten scarves. But the thistle-etched twin remained elusive. A soldier's life, he mused, orderly yet scarred by chaos. No cufflink, but chaos, perhaps, in his silence. Dr. Mortimer's compartment was last, its air sharp with the chemical tang of his trade. The attaché case sat locked on the bunk, but beside it lay a discarded lab coat, its pocket gaping. Poirot reached in, his fingers brushing a small metallic object. His heart quickened, but it was only a fountain pen, its nib crusted with dried ink. The washstand held a glass, empty save for a faint brownish stain. Tea or something more sinister. "The alchemist's lair," Poirot said softly, "but the treasure is not here. Or is it?" As they emerged, Thomas, hovering nervously, whispered, "Sirs, I checked the laundry bin as you asked. The linens from last night, they're gone. Sent to the wash-car already, mixed with the rest. If that cufflink was there." Poirot's eyes darkened, a storm brewing behind their calm. Gone? Convenient, no? A clue vanishes, like a rabbit into a magician's hat. "Thomas, you will fetch the laundry master, now." The laundry master, a grizzled man named Burrows, with hands like shovels, confirmed the worst. The linens had been bundled and soaked in boiling vats at the train's rear, any evidence now dissolved in suds and steam. "Standard procedure, sir," he grumbled. "Can't have dirty napkins cluttering first class. If there was a cufflink, it's likely melted or lost in the rinse." Hastings threw up his hands. "Blast it, Poirot! First the napkins wax, now the cufflink's gone. Someone's covering their tracks. Someone who knows we're closing in." "Oui," Poirot agreed, his voice a low purr of resolve. "But the cover betrays the crime, Hastings. To hide a clue is to confess its importance. We must shift our gaze back to the passengers. One of them holds the mate to our thistle, or knows where it lies." They returned to the lounge car, where the passengers sat in uneasy clusters, their faces a gallery of guarded expressions. Lady Eleanor clutched a rosary, her lips moving silently. Lang polished his cufflinks with a handkerchief, his eyes darting to Poirot. Blackwood stared out the window, his pipe unlit. Mortimer scribbled in a journal, his pen scratching like a guilty conscience. The air crackled with unspoken accusations, and Poirot, sensing the moment, clapped his hands, the sound sharp as a pistol shot. "Messieurs, madame," he announced, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a scalpel. "A clue has vanished, a silver cufflink, etched with a thistle, twin to the one found by Sir Reginald's body. It is small, yet it screams of intent. I ask you now, has anyone seen its mate? A pocket, a bag, a moment of carelessness. Speak, and ease the burden of your silence." A hush fell, broken only by the train's ceaseless clatter. Lady Eleanor's rosary slipped, beads scattering like spilled secrets. "A cufflink," she whispered. "Reginald's were a gift from his father, worn only for board meetings. I didn't notice if he had them last night." Lang's hand froze on his handkerchief, his gold cufflinks glinting. "None of mine, Poirot. Mine are monogrammed. VL. See for yourself." He extended a wrist too eagerly. Blackwood snorted, his voice rough as gravel. "Thistles. Hargrove's crest, right enough. I've none like that. Mine are regimental, crossed sabres. Check my trunk if you doubt me." Mortimer looked up from his journal, his spectacles fogging slightly. "Cufflinks? I'm a chemist, not a jeweller. My sleeves are held by buttons, practical, not ornamental. But if I may, Monsieur Poirot, why obsess over a bauble when the lock's the riddle? Wax in the keyhole, you said. Surely that points to sabotage." Poirot's smile was a blade, thin and sharp. "Sabotage, oui, but also sleight of hand. The cufflink is no bauble. It is a signature, left or lost by the killer's hand, and its absence now. It tells me our fox is cunning, but not invisible." As the passengers exchanged uneasy glances, Wilkins burst in, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot, Doncaster's 10 minutes off. The platform's crawling with coppers. Inspector Japp's among them. They'll want the body, the scene, everything." Poirot nodded, his expression serene yet steely. "Let them come, Wilkins. The body awaits but the truth. It is mine to deliver. Hastings, we return to compartment A. If the cufflink is gone, another clue waits, hidden but not lost." As they moved toward the corridor, the train lurched, a sudden jolt that sent a water glass tumbling in the lounge. It shattered, the sound a brittle echo of the vanishing clue. Poirot's eyes gleamed, undaunted. The web was fraying, but the spider's steps were growing clearer. Each misstep, a note in the symphony of justice he was composing, mile by relentless mile. Chapter 10. Masquerade in the Corridor. The night express slowed as it approached Doncaster, its iron heart thudding with a reluctant cadence, as if loath to deliver its passengers to the waiting constables. The corridor outside compartment A was a narrow artery of tension, the air thick with the lingering scent of polished wood, and the faint ghostly almond whiff that refused to fade. Hercule Poirot stood before the sealed door of the murder scene, his cane a silent metronome tapping against the carpet, his eyes scanning the brass fittings as if they might whisper confessions. Hastings hovered at his side, notebook clutched like a talisman, his face etched with the strain of a man chasing shadows that refused to stand still. 10 minutes, Poirot," Hastings muttered, glancing at his watch. "Japp'll be here any moment, and we've got a forged letter, a missing cufflink, and a lock jammed with wax. It's a devil's brew, and we're no closer to naming the killer." Poirot's moustaches twitched, a faint smile playing beneath their waxed perfection. "Patience, mon ami. The brew simmers, and the flavours will soon blend. The corridor, Hastings, it is a stage, and last night's masquerade played out here, in whispers and footsteps. Let us reconstruct the dance." He knelt, his magnifying glass catching the dim light as he examined the carpet runner, its crimson weave worn thin by countless souls. A faint smudge, barely visible, marked the threshold of compartment A. A scuff of boot polish, perhaps, or the residue of a hurried exit. "Observe," he murmured, "a trace of haste. Not the conductor's boots, too broad, nor the steward's. These are finer, pointed. A gentleman's shoe or a lady's heel." Hastings squinted, his frustration palpable. "A shoe? Poirot, we're grasping at straws. The cufflink's gone, the laundry's boiled. How do we even know who was here?" Poirot rose, his gaze drifting to the adjoining compartments. Lady Eleanor and Lang's to the left, Blackwood's across, Mortimer's beyond. We know Hastings because the guilty cannot resist the stage. Last night, after supper, the corridor was alive. Trays cleared, doors bolted, alibis woven. Let us summon those who danced closest to the crime. They began with Victor Lang, who sauntered in with the easy grace of a man accustomed to dodging scrutiny. His grey suit was impeccable, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, like a fox hearing hounds. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, leaning against the corridor wall, "you're making a mountain out of a molehill. I told you, Eleanor and I were bolted in all night. No midnight strolls, no skulking about." Poirot's smile was a velvet trap. "No strolls, monsieur. Yet the corridor is a thoroughfare of secrets. Tell me, did you hear anything after supper? Before the scream? A footstep, a door's creak, a tray's clatter?" Lang's fingers toyed with his gold cufflinks, the gesture too casual. "Nothing but the train's rumble. I read Eleanor slept. Her nerves were frayed. Reginald's absence, you know. I checked the bolt at 10, after the steward passed with the tea-trays." "Tea-trays," Poirot echoed, his eyes narrowing. "And the one outside Dr. Mortimer's door, spilled, cracked, stained with red wax. You saw it, perhaps on your way to refresh yourself." Lang's jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. "Didn't notice. I don't make a habit of inspecting other people's crockery. If you're implying I was out here tampering, implying." Poirot's voice was a soft lash. "I merely ask, monsieur. Your devotion to Lady Eleanor is admirable, but devotion can blind or bind. You may go." Next came Colonel Blackwood, his tweed suit reeking of stale cheroots, his face a map of irritation. "This is getting absurd, Poirot," he growled, folding his arms across his chest. "I was in my bunk, dead to the world. Corridor! Didn't set foot in it after dinner. If someone was sneaking about, it wasn't me." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze probing the Colonel's scarred cheek. "A soldier's sleep is light, non? Yet you heard nothing. No scream until Lady Eleanor's, no shuffle of feet. Your door faces the crime, Colonel. A prime seat for the masquerade." Blackwood's eyes flashed, his voice dropping to a rumble. "Prime seat, my foot. I had brandy, medicinal, mind you. Knocks me out colder than a Hun's bayonet. If there was a scuffle, it was quieter than a mouse." "Quiet," Poirot mused, his fingers brushing the scuff mark on the carpet. "Yet the corridor speaks, Colonel. A mark here, a wax stain there. You saw no one, no servant, no stranger." Blackwood hesitated, his pipe hand twitching. "Well, there was a chap, now I think on it. Noticed him after supper, loitering near Mortimer's door. Odd sort, dark coat, hat pulled low. Thought he was a porter, but he vanished quick. Didn't mention it, seemed trivial till now." Hastings's pencil scratched furiously. "A stranger? Good Lord, Poirot, a stowaway? That could explain the locked room." Poirot's expression remained inscrutable. "A stranger, or a mask, Hastings? Merci, Colonel. Your memory sharpens at last." Dr. Mortimer was next, his spectacles fogging as he shuffled into the corridor, attaché case in tow. "This is harassment, Monsieur Poirot," he protested, his voice a thin whine. "I've told you, I was reading journals, minding my own business. That tea-tray was an accident, nothing more." Poirot's cane pointed to the scuff mark, a silent accusation. "An accident, docteur? Like the wax in the lock, or the almond scent in the air? Tell me, did you see this stranger the Colonel speaks of? A man in a dark coat, perhaps, near your door?" Mortimer's face paled, his fingers tightening on the case. "Stranger? No, no, I saw no one. I was inside, as I said. My work. Delicate, you understand. I don't wander corridors, like some dilettante." "Dilettante," Poirot repeated, his tone laced with irony. "Yet your tea-tray wandered, docteur. And the red wax? Curious, how it matches the stain on the napkin. A chemist's precision, perhaps, in crafting a lock's sabotage?" Mortimer spluttered, his spectacles slipping. "Sabotage! I'm a scientist, not a saboteur. That wax could be anyone's. Sealing wax is common as coal. You're chasing phantoms, Poirot." "Phantoms," Poirot said softly, his eyes never leaving Mortimer's. "Yet phantoms leave no footprints. Merci, docteur. You may return to your journals." As Mortimer retreated, Hastings whispered, "That stranger, Poirot. Could it be Jonathan Hale? Slipped aboard to settle old scores. But the locked room, the room," Poirot interrupted, "is not locked to the mind, Hastings. The stranger is a mask, worn by one we know. The scuff, the wax, the missing cufflink, they are not accidents but choreography. We must watch the dancers closely now." A commotion broke their reverie. Wilkins, breathless, his moustache quivering. "Monsieur Poirot! The platform's in sight, Jap's waiting, and he's got a doctor with him. They'll want the body moved, the scene cleared." Poirot's eyes gleamed, undaunted. "Let them wait, Wilkins. The corridor has spoken, and its whispers are clear. The masquerade is ending. The killer's mask slips, Hastings, and soon it will fall." As the train slowed, its whistle a mournful cry, the shadows in the corridor seemed to lengthen, concealing a figure who watched from the wings, waiting, perhaps, for one final act. Chapter 11. The Gathering Storm. The night express groaned to a halt at Doncaster station, its brakes hissing like a beast reluctantly tamed. The platform swarmed with the dour efficiency of Yorkshire constables, their black helmets glinting under the noon sun. And at their centre stood Inspector Japp. His bowler hat tilted at a jaunty angle, his moustache bristling with the anticipation of a case worthy of his old friend Poirot. The passengers, herded into the lounge car under Wilkins' watchful eye, sat in a tableau of strained silence, their faces a gallery of dread and defiance. The murder of Sir Reginald Hargrove had transformed the train into a rolling prison. And now, with the law closing in, the air crackled with the promise of revelation or ruin. Poirot stood in the lounge car, his small frame a pillar of calm amid the storm, his cane resting lightly on the carpet as he surveyed the assembled suspects. Lady Eleanor, her black crepe dress a shroud of mourning laced with calculation. Victor Lang, his polished charm fraying at the edges. Colonel Blackwood, puffing his pipe with the belligerence of a cornered boar. Dr. Mortimer, clutching his attaché case like a lifeline. Hastings flanked Poirot, notebook in hand, his eyes darting between the suspects and the platform, where Jap's silhouette loomed like an approaching thunderhead. "Messieurs, madame," Poirot began, his voice a clarion cutting through the murmurs. "We stand at the precipice of truth. Sir Reginald Hargrove lies dead, strangled in a locked compartment, surrounded by clues that whisper of betrayal. A bent cufflink, a forged letter, a lock jammed with wax, a scent of almonds that haunts the air. The killer is among us, watching, waiting, but the time for waiting ends. I, Hercule Poirot, will now lay bare the threads of this crime, before the good Inspector Japp claims our stage." Lady Eleanor's rosary clicked, her voice sharp as cut glass. "Monsieur Poirot, this is torture. You speak of clues, but where is your proof? My husband's letter, it named Jonathan Hale. Have you found him, or is this all theatrics?" Lang's hand tightened on her arm, his smile a brittle mask. "Eleanor's right. You've poked and prodded, Poirot, but where's the killer? That stranger the Colonel saw, Hale perhaps, or are you accusing one of us?" Blackwood snorted, ash falling from his pipe. "Damned right. I've had enough of your insinuations, Poirot. If it's Hale, he's a ghost. If it's one of us, Name the blighter and be done with it." Mortimer adjusted his spectacles, his voice a nervous quaver. "Indeed, Monsieur Poirot, my reputation, my work, cannot withstand these accusations. The wax, the scent, it's all circumstantial. Where's your evidence?" Poirot's eyes gleamed, twin stars in a darkening sky. "Evidence, docteur? It is not the clue that convicts, but the pattern it weaves. Let us trace the tapestry. First the crime. Sir Reginald strangled with a silken cord, in a compartment locked from within. No entry, no exit, impossible you say. Yet the lock was jammed with red wax, as the steward's napkin revealed. A simple trick, but ingenious to delay discovery." He paced, his cane tapping a rhythm of revelation. The cuff-link, etched with a thistle, was dropped, not torn, in haste or design. Its mate is gone, vanished like a guilty secret. The letter found under Lady Eleanor's pillow speaks of hail, of vultures, yet its ink is fresh, its folds too crisp, a forgery placed to mislead. And the almond scent, not cyanide, but a chemical echo, perhaps from a chemist's vial. Oui? Mortimer flinched, his case rattling. "Nonsense! My vials are sealed. Industrial compounds, not poisons." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Patience, docteur. Let us consider motive. Sir Reginald was a titan of industry, but his empire was built on broken rivals, Jonathan Hale among them, ruined by Hargrove's mergers. Colonel Blackwood spoke of wartime debts, of rumours that Hargrove profited while soldiers starved. Lady Eleanor, you mourn a husband whose heart strayed to ledgers, leaving you to seek solace elsewhere." His gaze flicked to Lang, whose jaw tightened. "And you, Monsieur Lang," Poirot continued, "the loyal secretary, yet your alibi wavers. Smith, not Galsworthy, on your nightstand. A small lie, but lies are like pebbles in a pond, the ripples betray." Lang's smile vanished, his voice a low growl. "You're reaching, Poirot. I loved Eleanor, not her husband's money. Accuse me if you dare." Poirot turned to Blackwood. "Colonel, your debt to Hargrove was a chain, was it not? A reunion in Edinburgh? Yet your sleep was too deep, your ears deaf to screams. Convenient for a soldier." Blackwood's pipe clenched between his teeth. "I told you. Brandy! I'm no murderer. Damn your eyes." Poirot's gaze softened, almost pitying, as he faced Lady Eleanor. "And you, madame, a widow betrayed perhaps by a husband's secrets, or by another's ambition. The letter under your pillow, who placed it there, if not you?" Eleanor's eyes widened, her rosary snapping in her grip. "Me? How dare you? I loved Reginald, despite his faults. That letter, it terrified me." Poirot nodded, stepping back to address them all. "Terrified, we? But fear is the killer's ally. Let us imagine a plan meticulous to kill in a locked room. The wax jams the lock, delaying entry. The cord, taken from the blind, an improvisation. The cufflink, dropped to point to Hargrove himself, or to another. The letter forged to resurrect Hale's ghost. And the stranger in the corridor, seen by the colonel, a mask worn by one of you." A gasp rippled through the car. Hastings leaned forward, breathless. "Poirot, you mean someone disguised themselves? But who?" Poirot's smile was a crescent of triumph. "Not yet, Hastings. The storm gathers, but the lightning has not struck. I see the shape of the crime, but one piece remains. A confession, perhaps, or a final slip. You, monsieur, madame, will return to your compartments. Reflect. The truth will not wait for Doncaster." As the passengers dispersed, their faces pale as storm clouds, Japp's voice boomed from the platform. "Poirot, you old fox! Got a corpse for me, have you? Let's have a look, then." Poirot turned, his expression serene yet steely. "Welcome, mon cher Japp. The body awaits, but the soul of this crime, it trembles in the balance. Come, Hastings, we prepare for the final act." The train's whistle shrieked, a herald of the storm's peak, as Poirot's web tightened around a killer whose mask was fraying, thread by desperate thread. Chapter 12. The Unveiling. The lounge car of the night express was a crucible of anticipation. Its velvet armchairs and polished mahogany tables now a stage for Hercule Poirot's final act. The train, halted at Doncaster Station, hummed with the restless energy of a Josiah beast tethered too long, while outside, Inspector Japp and his constables milled on the platform, their boots a dull counterpoint to the murmurs within. The passengers, Lady Eleanor, Victor Lang, Colonel Blackwood, and Dr. Mortimer, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a gallery of dread, defiance, and guarded hope. Hastings stood by Poirot's side, notebook clutched like a lifeline, his eyes wide with the thrill of impending revelation. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and fear, and Poirot, small yet commanding, stood at the centre, his cane a sceptre of justice. "Messieurs, madame," Poirot began, his voice a silken thread weaving through the silence. "We have journeyed through a labyrinth of lies, guided by the dim lanterns of clues. A bent cufflink, a forged letter, a lock jammed with wax, a scent of almonds, a stranger's shadow in the corridor. Sir Reginald Hargrove lies dead, strangled in a locked compartment, and the killer, oh, the killer is no phantom, but one among us, cloaked in a masquerade of motive and method. Now, the curtain falls. Hercule Poirot unveils the truth." Lady Eleanor's rosary clicked, her voice sharp as frost. "Monsieur Poirot, enough theatrics. If you know the murderer, name them. My husband's death demands justice, not riddles." Lang's hand tightened on her arm, his polished smile gone. "She's right, Poirot. You've spun a fine tale, but where's your proof? Jonathan Hale's ghost? Or are you pointing at one of us?" Blackwood puffed his pipe, ash falling like spent promises. "Get on with it, man. I've faced firing squads with less suspense." Mortimer clutched his attaché case, his spectacles glinting with nervous defiance. "This is preposterous. My work, my reputation cannot withstand these accusations. Show us evidence, or let the police do their job." Poirot's eyes gleamed, twin stars in a twilight of doubt. "Evidence, docteur. It is here, in the tapestry of human frailty. Let us weave it together. The crime, Sir Reginald, strangled with a silken cord, in a compartment locked from within. The lock, jammed with red wax as the napkin revealed, to delay discovery. The cufflink, etched with a thistle, dropped not in struggle but in design. The letter forged to resurrect Jonathan Hale's spectre, placed under Lady Eleanor's pillow. And the almond scent, not cyanide, but a chemical echo, perhaps from a chemist's vial. He paced, his cane tapping a rhythm of revelation. First, the method. The locked room is no mystery to the ingenious. The killer entered before the bolt was thrown, perhaps during supper, when Hargrove was in the dining car. The wax was applied to the lock's interior, ensuring Lady Eleanor's key would fail, creating the illusion of an impenetrable chamber. The cord cut from the blind was a weapon of opportunity, swift, silent. The killer waited, struck, and left, locking the door with Hargrove's own key, which remained inside. Hastings gasped, his pencil pausing. "But Poirot, how? The bolt was thrown. No one could lock it from outside." Poirot's smile was a blade of light. "Ah, Hastings, the bolt is the key, literally. A simple trick, a thread, perhaps, looped through the bolt's mechanism. pulled through a crack in the doorframe after locking. The thread snaps or is withdrawn, leaving no trace. A magician's sleight, but not magic. Lady Eleanor's face paled, her rosary slipping. A thread? You mean someone planned this? Down to the smallest detail? Oui, madame, Poirot said, his gaze softening but unyielding. And now the motive. Sir Reginald was a titan, but his empire crushed rivals. Jonathan Hale, ruined years ago, a ghost invoked by the letter. But Hale is not here. The letter is a forgery, its ink too fresh, its placement too convenient. Who then benefits from his shadow? He turned to Blackwood, whose pipe trembled. Colonel, you spoke of debts to Hargrove. Wartime favours, a pension secured, but also of rumours, profiteering, short shipments. Did those rumours sting when Hargrove's wealth grew while your pension dwindled? Your compartment faces the crime, yet you slept through a scream. A soldier's sleep or a liar's? Blackwood's face reddened, his voice a growl. Damn your insinuations, Poirot. I owed Hargrove, not hated him. I was out cold. Brandy, as I said. Poirot's gaze shifted to Mortimer. Docteur, your vials whisper of alchemy, compounds for Hargrove's mills, but also of poisons misnamed as medicines. The almond scent, amygdalin perhaps from your catalyst. And the wax on your tray's napkin, red like the lock's sabotage. A chemist's precision, no? Mortimer spluttered, his case rattling. Absurd! My work is legitimate, industrial, not criminal. The wax, common, I told you. Poirot nodded, then turned to Lang. Monsieur Lang, the devoted secretary. Your alibi wavers Smith, not Galsworthy. Your devotion to Lady Eleanor is clear, but was it to her heart or her husband's fortune? You knew his papers, his enemies? Did you forge the letter planting Hale's name to mislead? Lang's eyes flashed, his voice low. You're barking up the wrong tree, Poirot. I love Eleanor. Hargrove's death gains me nothing but her grief. Poirot paused, his eyes sweeping the group, then settled on Lady Eleanor. And you, madame, a widow betrayed, perhaps not by Hargrove's heart, but by his secrets. The letter under your pillow. Who placed it, if not you? A wife scorned, an empire to inherit, motive enough for murder. Eleanor rose, her voice a whip. How dare you? I loved Reginald, flaws and all. I'd never— Enough! Poirot's voice cracked like thunder, silencing the room. The killer is here, and the mask falls now. The cufflink, the wax, the letter, they point to one whose hands are deft, whose heart burns with hidden fire. Victor Lang, step forward. Lang froze, his face a mask of shock. Me! You're mad, Poirot. I was with Eleanor, bolted in. Poirot's smile was relentless. Bolted, oui, but not all night. You slipped out, using the corridor's shadows. The stranger Blackwood saw, dark coat, hat low, was you, disguised in a porter's cloak, stolen from the galley. You jammed the lock with wax from Mortimer's tray, a sleight to frame the chemist. The cufflink, Hargrove's, yes, but taken from his study weeks ago, dropped to suggest suicide or struggle. The letter forged in your hand learned from years of handling his papers. And the almond scent. A touch of your cologne, Floris number 89, laced with a chemical note to mimic poison, diverting us to Mortimer. Lang laughed, a brittle sound. Fiction, Poirot. You've no proof. Poirot produced the napkin, its wax stain gleaming. This, from your tray's vicinity, and this. He held up a tiny thread, plucked from the corridor's carpet. Silk, from a porter's cloak caught in your haste. But the final proof? Your cufflinks, monsieur. Gold, monogrammed VL. Yet last night, in the dining car, one was missing, replaced by a plain stud. Why? because you lost its twin scrambling to lock the door after the deed." Lang's face drained of colour, his hand flying to his wrist. "You're guessing." "No," Poirot said, his voice steel. "I know. You killed Hargrove for love and greed, Eleanor's heart, her inheritance. You thought to frame Hale's ghost or Mortimer's vials, but the grey cells of Hercule Poirot see through masks." Eleanor gasped, pulling away from Lang. "Victor! No, it can't be!" Lang's mask crumbled, his voice a snarl. "Damn you, Poirot! Yes, I did it! Hargrove was a tyrant, bled her dry, ignored her. I gave her freedom, and we'd have his millions, the lock, the cord. It was perfect." Japp burst in, constables at his heels. "Blimey, Poirot! You've done it again, Lang. You're nicked." As the handcuffs clicked, Poirot turned to Hastings, his eyes softening. "The storm breaks, mon ami. The truth, like lightning, illuminates all." The passengers exhaled, a collective release, as Lang was led away. The night express, its secrets unveiled, stood ready to resume its journey, leaving behind a killer unmasked and a justice served. Chapter 13. Dawn over the Highlands. The night express pulled away from Doncaster station with a mournful whistle, its crimson carriages gleaming under the first rays of a sun that seemed to rise in absolution. The platform, now receding into a blur of grey stone and constables' helmets, bore witness to Victor Lang's departure, handcuffed, his polished charm shattered, led away by Inspector Japp with a grim nod to Poirot's genius. The passengers, released from the lounge car's crucible, had retreated to their compartments, their faces etched with relief, guilt, or quiet introspection. The storm of suspicion had broken, and the air, though still heavy with the weight of murder, carried the faint promise of closure. In their compartment, Hercule Poirot sat by the window, his tisane steaming in its cup, the leather-bound Montaigne open but untouched on his lap. His cane rested against the wall, its silver head catching the dawn's light like a beacon of resolved truths. Captain Hastings, opposite, scribbled final notes in his dog-eared notebook, his face a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Beyond the glass, the Yorkshire dales gave way to the rugged promise of the Scottish border, heather-clad hills rolling toward the horizon like a tapestry woven by giants. "Well, Poirot," Hastings ventured, setting down his pencil, "you've done it again. Plucked the killer from a locked room like a rabbit from a hat. Lang, of all people. I thought him a cad, but a murderer. That took some nerve, forging the letter, staging the wax, planting that cufflink. And the cologne, Floris, you said, mimicking poison to throw us off. Diabolical." Poirot's moustaches quivered, a faint smile softening his features. "Diabolical, oui, but human, Hastings. The heart of this crime was not the lock or the cord, but the passions that drove them. Love twisted to greed, loyalty warped to betrayal. Lang saw in Lady Eleanor not just a woman, but a fortune, and in Sir Reginald, an obstacle to both. His plan was clever, but no plan outwits the grey cells when they are on guard." Hastings leaned back, his eyes tracing the passing hills. Poor Lady Eleanor. She seemed shattered when Lang confessed. Do you think she suspected him, deep down? That letter under her pillow chilling. To think he placed it there, knowing she'd find it. Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where a hawk circled above a distant crag. Suspected? Perhaps Hastings, in that quiet corner of the soul, where truth whispers before it shouts. But love blinds, and Eleanor loved Lang, or the idea of him. The letter was his masterstroke, invoking Hale's ghost to divert us. Yet it was his undoing. The ink too fresh, the folds too neat, the heart betrays, even when the hand is steady. A soft knock interrupted. Lady Eleanor, her black crepe dress replaced by a simple grey travelling suit, her face pale but composed. She stood in the doorway, her sapphire ring gone, her hands clasped as if to anchor her resolve. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but soft, "I owe you an apology. I doubted you, called your methods theatrics. But you've given me truth, however bitter. May I sit?" Poirot gestured to the bunk, his expression gentle. "Madame, the truth is a medicine, bitter but healing, please." She sank onto the edge, her eyes fixed on the floor. "Victor, I thought he loved me. Reginald was cold, consumed by his mills, his deals. Victor offered warmth, promises. I never imagined he'd, oh God, to think I slept beside a murderer." A tear escaped, quickly brushed, away. "The letter, when I found it, I believed it was Reginald's. Was I such a fool?" Poirot's voice was a balm. "Not a fool, madame, but human. Lang preyed on your heart's hunger, as he preyed on Hargrove's wealth. The letter was his cruelest stroke, using your grief to shield his guilt, but you are free now, free to mourn and to mend." Eleanor nodded, a faint spark returning to her eyes. "Free, yes. I'll return to Devon, to my family's estate. Reginald's empire. It can rot for all I care. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for seeing what I could not." As she left, her steps lighter despite the weight of loss, Hastings shook his head. "What a mess, Poirot. Blackwood's debts, Mortimer's vials, Hale's shadow, all red herrings in the end. And that almond scent, Lang's cologne. I'd have bet my pension on Mortimer." Poirot chuckled, a soft trill like champagne bubbles. The scent, Hastings, was the flourish of a showman. Lang knew a chemist's presence would draw suspicion. His cologne, laced with a chemical note, was a nudge toward Mortimer's vials. But the cord, the wax, the cufflink, they spoke of a man intimate with Hargrove's world, his habits, his enemies. Lang alone had access, motive, and the audacity to stage such a masquerade. The train climbed now, the hills giving way to the wild sweep of the highlands, their peaks kissed by mist. Poirot sipped his tisane, his gaze distant. This case, Hastings, reminds us the human heart is the true locked room. No bolt can shield its secrets, no key can hide its flaws. We solve the crime, but the heart, it remains a mystery. Hastings grinned, closing his notebook. "You're getting philosophical, old boy. But I'll take your grey cells over poetry any day. What now? Edinburgh's symposium, or a holiday after all this?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, his cane tapping a final note. "Edinburgh, mon ami, for the symposium, and perhaps a dram of whiskey to toast the truth. But first, I shall finish Montaigne. His essays, like murder, reveal the soul's contradictions." As the night express surged toward the highlands, its whistle a hymn to journeys ended and begun, the dawn broke fully, bathing the carriage in golden light. The shadows of the night were gone, but Poirot knew they would linger in memory. As all great mysteries do, etched like thistles on the heart. Sharp and enduring. The end.